Michael Carrick's United are scary. City at home. Arsenal away.
Dorking takes it with him. Dorking's left-footed effort. Oh, it's a screamer!
Villa at home.
Into the penalty area. Cunha scores for Manchester United.
Chelsea away.
Balls it back into the area. United in the front. Matheus Cunha.
Since his return to United, no Premier League team has won more points. And on the pitch, his side has looked almost untouchable. Yes, Carrick did move away from Amorim's much-debated 3-4-2-1 system, restoring a 4-2-3-1 that has allowed his players to shine in their natural roles. But the reasons for United's turnaround run much deeper than a simple formation change, and since the end of last season those ideas have been further refined by Carrick for the campaign ahead, built to raise standards, fix flaws and hurt opponents in new ways. So what exactly are these ideas? In recent Premier League seasons, United have too often been dragged into chaotic, end-to-end matches against lesser opponents while leaning heavily on counter-attacks versus the bigger sides, only to leave themselves far too exposed at the back. But now, Carrick is already making changes to push United away from that chaotic unpredictability and towards something closer to control. Under him, United's possession spells have become longer and more intricate than they were under Amorim, with sequences of more than 10 passes now occurring far more often, an increase from 9.7 to 12.2 such sequences per game. Since the end of last season, however, there's arguably been an even greater emphasis on dictating tempo and suffocating opponents in their own half. The experimental pivot of Andres Santos and Mason Mount this pre-season is exemplifying this best. They're slowing the game down and using calm control to pin sides inside their box while technically gifted forward players do the real damage, stepping into the half spaces to receive line-breaking passes and stretch the defence deeper and deeper. But for United to actually dominate possession, Carrick has to make the space between the backline and midfield as small as possible, allowing a high defensive line for rapid counter-pressing the moment United lose the ball in the opposition half. Previous managers have struggled to nail this at United because the defence has too often lacked the necessary pace to deter teams from launching long balls in behind. But with centre-backs in the mould of Aiden Heaven and Lenny Yoro, a new holding midfielder with the mobility Casemiro lacked, and potentially a new left-back option capable of dropping into midfield when United go high, Carrick may finally have what's needed. In terms of average starting distance when initiating a counter-press, Amorim's 43.1 metres would have ranked them the fourth highest pressing team in the Premier League behind only City, Arsenal and Brighton, while Carrick's 41.8 metres puts them much closer to the league average. But those numbers don't automatically suggest Carrick's side haven't been winning the ball back effectively. They're simply skewed by United's willingness to sit back in a mid to low block against stronger opposition. Carrick's derby win over City, admittedly an extreme case, captured the shift in approach perfectly. United sank into a narrow, disciplined 4-4-2 low block, squeezing the spaces City usually exploit between the lines. The striking part? This more conservative foundation hasn't dulled United's bite, and despite starting from a deeper, lower risk shape, they're pressing almost as frequently as before. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, we'd be incredibly grateful if you subscribed. Your support helps us grow and continue creating the content you love. When you picture how Carrick was as a player, you imagine a metronomic midfielder who plays safe but secure passes to lay the foundations for sustained possession. As a coach, his approach is more nuanced, but the principle remains largely the same. If you want control, it starts in midfield. It's no secret that United have invested heavily in their midfield this summer, and the logic behind those moves ties to Carrick's ambition to assemble a trio inspired by PSG's dynamic lineup of Vitinha, Fabian Ruiz and João Neves. Aside from United's current midfield looking like the Alibaba version of PSG's, the real question is how to make it work. PSG usually operate in a 4-3-3, while Carrick's default is a 4-2-3-1. Still, a hybrid system or even a straight switch to a midfield 3 remains possible, particularly with Bruno already familiar with a deeper role under Amorim and in his current role in the Portugal squad. Since Carrick's arrival, United's midfield rebuild has centred on the reintegration of Kobbie Mainoo ever since his puzzling alienation under the dictatorship of Amorim. Under Carrick, the switch to a back four has allowed United to field an extra attacking profile regardless of their shape across different phases of play. His partnership with Casemiro, one that Amorim had deemed unfeasible, has been impressive in of itself. let alone the fact that it has freed up Bruno to flourish higher up the field. Casemiro's time at United ended on a high, but nostalgia arguably makes that spell look better than it really was. In reality, his biggest impact came through rage-baiting set-piece goals rather than consistent defensive midfield control, forcing Carrick to reshape his entire system around the Brazilian's forward bursts and leaving Mainu to carry much of the defensive burden for two players.
When you look at what Casemiro gives, it's having someone who's a tough tackler. And you really saw the best of Casemiro when the play was in front, when United would go and press. You saw the worst of him at different times when they get exposed at different times. They still got the results in transition.
While Mainu's defending has dramatically improved since, Carrick wants him to start attacking the space behind opposing defences, fully harnessing his attacking qualities and helping him develop into a more complete midfielder. But as far as midfielders go, Mainu is, first and foremost, a ball carrier. His most impactful moments come when he collects the ball deep and drives forward, evading pressure with close control rather than by splitting lines with line-breaking passes. It's a valuable trait and one Michael Carrick will certainly look to spam, but it can also turn United's build-up play into a one-trick pony. Because if Mainu gets crowded out or dispossessed, there is often no alternative way to progress the ball but to hoof it upfield to Sesko and inshallah. In this regard, a pass-first midfielder like Carrick was as a player must be paired with Mainu if United are to excel with him in the lineup. Santos offers a solution to this tactical dilemma, being a pass-first midfielder ranked in the 99th percentile among Premier League midfielders for progressive passes completed. In that sense, he complements rather than replicates Mainu, as he ranks in just the 19th percentile for progressive carries, preferring to release the ball early. Santos screens the backline, drops between his centre-backs, protects the spaces that were vulnerable last season, and breaks up attacks with authority. In doing so, he brings balance back to the midfield and separates himself from his fellow Brazilian in a way that his new teammates will be thankful for. In truth, because Santos is willing to sit deeper and patrol in front of the defensive line, he is the only fully secure defensive midfielder option, and that makes him essential to United's midfield.
Midfielders, and especially defensive midfielders, you can't replace someone who reads the game. You see with someone like a Rodri who does it at the highest level. I'd much rather have someone positionally who's aware. That is worth its weight in gold more than someone who just runs like a chicken with its head cut off for 90 minutes.
Across every other pairing without him, there's a clear weakness. Tielemans' dubious running power and overall mobility make a partnership with Mainu, in particular, a genuine concern against the Premier League's high-tempo sides. The reality is that Mainu and Tielemans will naturally want the same roaming role as Mount, and it's starting to feel as though they will be competing for the same role or for Bruno's when the talisman is rested. United had kept one clean sheet more across Carrick's first 12 games than they did in Amorim's 20 last season, and while they were conceding 2.2 big chances per game before, that figure has fallen sharply to 1.3. Shot accuracy has climbed from 45.4% to 54.3%, and their conversion rate has improved from 10.3% to 13.8%. They're not just shooting more cleanly, they're making it count. But is it sustainable? Shot conversion rates can run hot and cold. Expected goals, however, tend to be a steadier guide to what's coming next. Defensively, United's non-penalty XG conceded has dropped to 0.9 per game, down from 1.3 before his arrival. Looking back, the biggest thorn in Amorim's tenure was that, for all the extra protection that was supposed to accompany playing with a back three, United still looked as porous as a broken condom. With Casemiro departing, the obvious solution for United would have been to seek a direct replacement. At his best, Casemiro's game is defined by his front-footed defensive intensity, stepping out to snuff out danger and break up attacks before they gather momentum. Crucially, his defensive steel is matched by a calmness on the ball and an ability to spray passes so perfectly weighted they could find God himself. Tielemans may not be a like-for-like successor, but stylistically, he is closer to Casemiro than you might think. He has all the hallmarks of an anchoring midfielder, comfortable in the build-up, press-resistant in tight spaces, and disciplined in his use of the ball. Out of possession too, his willingness to defend on the front foot is evident in his tackling frequency, which ranked the 6th highest among Premier League midfielders last season. Where he stands apart though is in his discipline, as across 279 appearances in the competition he has remarkably never been sent off despite picking up 28 yellow cards. Much like Casemiro, who turned 34 in February and increasingly relied on his reading of the game than on raw athleticism, Tielemans defends with intelligence. He chose his moments carefully, often inviting pressure before stepping forward decisively to regain possession. Not every midfielder can truly balance defensive discipline with attacking thrust, but Tielemans is one of the few who can. He was the catalyst behind many of Villa's attacks, fizzing passes through the lines and driving his team up the pitch, a burden that has too often rested solely on Bruno Fernandes at United. That will change with the arrival of Tielemans, who also ranked first among midfielders for passes that broke 2 lines and was second only to City's Rodri for line-breaking passes made under pressure. Clearly he is not a midfielder who settles for safe sideways passes. Carrick's arrival has seen United emphasise playing more centrally than under Amorim. His team is operating closer together in the middle of the pitch to combine with speed, and favouring half-space play more often than Amorim, who relied more on his team shifting the ball out to the wing-backs to progress the attack. Having linked up superbly with Morgan Rogers, playing 40 line-breaking passes to him in the league last season, 14 more than any other teammate, Tielemans gives United supporters every reason to be excited about the prospect of a similar partnership forming down the centre alongside Bruno. He thrives on firing passes through central spaces, and being able to do so with either foot will create a lot more angles to prize open, stubborn defences. If Bruno can receive a pass on the half-turn and drive at the opposition, those vertical passes would immediately tilt the pitch in United's favour, particularly with runners like Cunha and Mbeumo darting beyond him and pinning the back line. Even higher up the pitch, Tielemans remains a central conduit. At Villa, he frequently anticipated Ollie Watkins' runs, clipping perfectly weighted passes into his stride. On that evidence, Šeško will be creaming his pants at the thought of the crosses and through balls about to come his way. Under Amorim, United had already begun playing faster and more direct, ditching the slow build-up play from the back that had plagued them the season before like coronavirus, and in the process, cutting down turnovers in their defensive third. By match day 11, Amorim's side had attempted the 3rd most long balls in the league, and their attack, ranked 5th slowest last season, had climbed to the 8th fastest. Interestingly though, United's overall speed of play has remained almost unchanged under Carrick. Even more encouragingly, a greater share of passes now occur in the opponent's half, while their passes completed in the final third have risen from 77.2 passes per game under Amorim to 90.2. Playing fast, intricate football is a delicate balancing act, one that demands players who are technically sharp and composed under pressure, not cursed with the first touch of a donkey. It's also the style most United supporters crave, and crucially, Carrick has pushed the team noticeably closer to achieving that. If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe for more content like this. Also, don't forget to hit the notifications bell so you never miss a beat. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.